I'm going to do a little eco printing today, and while I talk, I'm just going to flip through some of the ones that I've done over the past couple of days. I was gifted a big bucket of flowers from a local store, and I just went to the floral department and said, hey, do y'all have any flowers that are not quite so fresh, you know, some that you're about to throw away? And they had this big bucket full, and she said, yeah, I've got these. And I said, well, you know, what happens to those? And she said, well, we usually donate them. Do you need some of them? And I said, yeah. So we talked about what I wanted them for, and she just gave me the whole bucket. So I was their weekly donation person, I guess. I took them home and then immediately got overwhelmed because there were so dang many of them. So yeah, that's what I've been doing all weekend, is just eco printing. And I've got some interesting variations that I'll show you, and some things that I learned. I learn something every time I do this. So I will explain that. Some of these pages are not even dry yet. And here's one thing I learned. Roses print well, but light colored ones, they usually just come out either yellow or brown, which is really not a bad thing. Because more than the color, I'm more about the pattern. The leaves, rose leaves, just print beautifully. But I had big bouquets of yellow and white roses, and it was just really limited in you know, how much of that I wanted to use. There's just really only so many yellow blobs that one person needs in their lives, right? But I mean, look, even though this color is not fabulous, look at the pattern. Can you see how much detail that print picked up? Oh, it is absolutely beautiful, I think. So I consulted the person who knows all things eco printing, Rosemary Morris, and I know that in the past that she has frozen some leaves from her trees, and then, you know, you can freeze them, I guess, indefinitely, and then when you take them out to use them, they print beautifully. And I asked her about flowers, and she said, you know, flowers, some freeze okay, some don't, but she said you can dry them. And even though, you know, they're going to wrinkle up and turn brown, they don't lose their pigment. So if it's like red roses, which do print with beautiful color, if you dry them, she said they'll still print with their beautiful color. So that was my plan. That is my plan for a bunch of those flowers that I got. So keep that in mind if, you know, you've got, this is late summer here in the U.S., and I don't know if you're like me, I've given up on taking care of the flowers in my yard. I'm just letting them slowly die because it's too hot to get out there and water them, and I don't care. I'm over it. In the spring, I am all about those pretty flowers on my porch. Late summer, no, don't care. Oh, I think this is going to be my favorite rose print. Look at that. And I'm pretty sure that was just a big white or yellow rose, but just the detail that came out is gorgeous. So yes, if they're kind of dried up, they're not very fresh, they're wilty, whatever, you can still print with them. So don't feel like that you have to have perfectly fresh everything. These are some little roses that, again, were not, I think they were kind of a light peach color, and light colors, I just was not getting much out of them. Now there are different mordants that you can add to your eco bath, whatever, your water or your, even the paper or the flowers, that will alter the color of your print. Sometimes it just intensifies it, and depending on what the mordant is, it can change the color. That's extra effort to me, and I'm not really interested in that. So I don't bother. But there is that. And And I also, this was a total accident when I did this the other day, because I was printing some stuff. These were this blue color is begonias from my yard, like begonias that are dying of thirst. And I just put them out of their misery, clipped them off, printed them, and they come out kind of bluish. And I used some paper that I thought was blank, but it wasn't. I had used it as a kind of a wipe-off sheet when I was stenciling some stuff, and I was just using white paint on stencils, and then the stencils were covered with white paint, so I laid them on some paper, and the paint transferred to the paper, and then the stencil pattern showed through. So it was an accident the first time it happened. It's very subtle, but it's there. And then, I started doing it on purpose because, woo, cool. So you can kind of see that this was a PM Artist Studio, one of their Daisy stencils, which is definitely one of my favorites. So versatile. This might have been actually the mask, not the stencil. But yeah, that happened accidentally, so then I just went on a quest to make it happen on purpose. So I'm going to show you that today. In case you're interested, you can use any stencil. All you need is the stencil, some white paint, and some paper. This is my favorite Hammermill 32-pound printer paper. I think they call it color copy paper or something. It's just a good quality computer paper. And eco printing, I think ideally you would want to use something like a watercolor paper that can hold up to the water. Now you can boil your papers or you can steam them. I've done them both ways. Some of those prints I just showed you, some of those were boiled, some were steamed. You can do it either way and it works just fine. I like the boiled. I do the boiled when I want to add dye to the water. And when I realized that all of these white roses and the yellow roses and even the peach and coral and some of the like lavender purple ones, they all print the same kind of yellow. I was like, okay, that's kind of boring. But if you add some dye to the water, is that the only one that, oh no, there we go. Then it kind of seeps in the edges and then you get some interesting color. So that's what, I've got some purple and some pinks. So that's what that is. And that's easy to do. I just use RIT dye. I tried it with some like permanent intense watercolors and it worked okay. The color was not as vibrant as the dye is, but it put color back there. So there is that. So, okay, the stenciling, I'm just going to do one because we all know how to stencil, I hope. And let's just go ahead and use that Daisy one that I love so much. This is PM Artist Studios, and they have the, why do I keep wanting to say Tyvek? That's not right. Yupo stencils. So I'm just going to put a few here and there. Whatever, it doesn't matter. They can overlap or not. We don't really care. I'm fussing an awful lot if we don't really care, right? I'm telling myself we don't really care, Shannon. Pretend like you don't really care. Okay. Use any white paint. Thinner is better. My big bottle of $5 Anita's Craft Acrylic that I got at Hobby Lobby eons ago is almost empty. It's pretty much all boogers now inside it. So I'm using golden because it's what I have. I got to get some more Craft Acrylic. And because this one is so thick, I need to thin it out. And this is really kind of the key here. You want your paint thin. If it's too thick, your papers are going to stick together when you heat them. So thin it out. You can use a sponge or you can use a little brush here. And then you just apply a thin coat of the paint. And you know, you don't even have to be exact, because Lord knows it is not going to come out exact. Some of it's going to get completely covered with your print. So just make it wherever. You can overlap or not, or you can be like me and you can't see a thing that you have just done, so you just cross your fingers and hope that it turns out. Okay, I can kind of see here and there, and I don't know if you can. I've got so much glare. I'm in my kitchen today because I needed space, but you just have to trust me. There is white paint on there. I'm going to use up the rest of this. I can't waste it. So now I've got my stenciled papers. The paint's dry. I've got some more that I had done previously and some blank paper. I usually do maybe about a dozen in each little bundle, but it may just depend on the size of the pot you have. I found me a nice big old stock pot at a thrift store for a couple of dollars. Has a handle and a lid. It's just perfect. And I can take a regular sheet of paper, fold it in half, and it will fit perfectly down inside the pot. If that isn't an option for you, you can roll, you know, once you get your plants in there, you can roll the pages. I don't have good luck with that because I'm using computer paper and it's damp and it rips. If you're using a watercolor paper, you might have better luck with that. I'll show you more about bundling it together, but you do want to keep the size of your pot in mind. You can steam or you can boil. Now if you steam, you do it just like you do your veggies. Put water in the bottom, and then if you have an old veggie steamer that you can put your bundle in, you can use that. I don't have an old one, I just have the one that I use. But I had some wire. This is hardware cloth from the hardware store, and I made this little stand so that you know, the water's underneath here, and then I can just lay my bundle on top and it steams. It's not actually down in the water, and that works just fine. For the one that I put down in the water, because my pot is so deep, I have trouble getting it out. So I took some more of that hardware cloth and just put some craft wire on it, and then I lay my bundle on here. I have to weigh it down because you put it in, this is, you know, when I'm not steaming, when I'm boiling, you put it in the water, it's going to float to the top. So I have this rock that I found across the street. And I put that on top of it to weigh it down. Then when it's done, I can just lift it out of the water like this. So you can go through the trouble of this, or you know what, you can just go for it, make do with what you've got, and then if it's something you like doing, you can go through all the trouble of, you know, customizing it to suit you later. This is not difficult. It can feel kind of daunting and complicated. It's not. It does take some time, but outside of that, it's doable. It's totally doable. So let's just get started putting our plant matter down. Y'all, I have used, you know what Dallas grass is? It's kind of like crabgrass. Yeah, that's pretty much all that grows in my yard except for what's in my pots on the porch. I've used Dallas grass. It prints beautifully. It prints very, very green, like grass green, but especially the little, you know, it has little shoots that come up with little twig furry things with the black dots, whatever they are. Yeah, that prints actually beautifully. So don't worry about plant matter. Use what you've got, or what you can get from, like I said, maybe from a store that has a floral department. So let's do this little pink rose, which I'm pretty sure is gonna print yellow, because most of them do. And for roses like this, I snip the stem off close to here. I try not to use any big thick stems because they just poke holes in my paper. So again, if you're using watercolor paper, you have more options. But what I do is just open it up. And I'm trying to get down to the very middle because I do want this to kind of lay flat. I'm going to have to do a little surgery on it to make that happen because it's got, you know, that middle part. There we go, right there. Very dimensional. Now sometimes I will snip this off and then use the little hairy things. They don't really have any color, but they make dots all over the page, which can be cool. Most of the time, that's okay. I just I give it a trim, you know, just take some off the top. Now if you cut down too far, all the petals are going to let loose and your whole flower falls apart, which is really not a big deal because I like to use loose petals as well as the full flower. And for one this full, I'm probably going to remove some petals anyway because it's just, there's just a lot going on here. So I'm going to take some of these out. And then you can't, it doesn't matter if you lay it down upside down, right side up. Doesn't matter, but I do like to just kind of spread it out so that, you know, it's flower shaped. Like over here, there's not many petals, so I'm just going to fill in with some of these loose ones. You learn a lot about the way flowers grow. You know, it's not always what you think. Like I thought that roses, they were like the ones that we make out of ribbon or paper, where you just, you know, fold the same direction. Oh no, real roses, the petals will go in this direction and then suddenly they change directions in the middle. And then they'll change directions again. I did not know that happened. I'm just fascinated by that. Okay, so we'll do that. I can do something else on here or not. I may just put, let's just put some of these stray petals down here. Yeah, some of those. We'll just do that, just 'cause. Then I'm going to fold it over carefully and set it aside. And usually what I'll do, this is just me, I'll set it here, and because I'm using such a thin paper, I like to put something between each of my layers just so that the whole thing is a little more cushioned. So I've got this stack of, these were from previous eco printing batches, and they're just papers that, you know, either they tore or it didn't print well. It was just this blob of color that I didn't really like. You know, I mean, there's stuff going on there, but it's not stuff that I necessarily like. So I will use that there. And I especially want, I've got some cardstock in here. I want some cardstock on the top and bottom of my bundle. And you'll see why when we get to the end of it. So I kind of start doing that. And I've got my brick here, and I'll just keep it flat so that nothing comes out. Now the bulk, my flower, I put at the top here. So whatever I do next, if it has a bulky section, I'm going to turn it so that it's at the bottom so that it stays kind of even, because you don't want your stack to be like all of your stuff here and then it's weird. So I hope that makes sense. So that is what I do with the roses, and then other times I will just sprinkle petals. Here, let's do that. I've got a red one here. It's kind of a small one. Let's just sprinkle petals. Like that. Mix it with the pink and see what happens. Sometimes I forget what happens because I don't write down what I do, and then I open them up and I can't remember, you know, oh, was that the pink rose? Was that the white rose? I don't know. I do not know. Let's just do like that. And fold it over and then put something on top. This one's pretty flat, so I don't have to worry about turning it so that I'm alternating the bulk. Just do it like that. Now, some of the plants that I got from the floral department at my store were these long stalks of this. They were all, you know, wrapped in their little clear plastic bundles, and the label on it said assorted grass. It was not real specific. I don't know what this is, but oh my gosh, it prints beautifully. It's got this thing in the middle, which is really dimensional and ends up, you know, that can really poke a hole in your paper. So what I do is I just cut that in half, like that, and then I just kind of cut off whatever's really bulky. So it kind of holds together, but it's a lot flatter now. So there's that. And you know, you decide if you want like one big focal thing or if you want a whole bunch. I tend to do a little bit of both, so I have a variety of prints. Some of them just end up looking like a big mess because I put so much stuff in there. And a lot of the times, you know, as long as it prints well and I like it, I will just add it to my stash of painty papers and just use it like it was a painty paper. These just, you know, whether you get color or pattern or both, there's just a lot of interestingness going on. Things can kind of shift as I'm moving them around and bundling them up, and that's all right. I just kind of, you know, whatever happens, happens. Piece in between. These have been run through several batches as my in-between sheets, so they're looking a little experienced. Now I brought in some of the pitiful begonias from my porch, and you can see, you know, they're not just awful. I'm gonna leave that on there. Here's what I'm gonna do. And I really like the way they print, the leaves and all. They usually come out a nice blue, and I don't know if different varieties of begonia are gonna do different, I don't know. But I do kind of like them. So I'm gonna do that. Just put that whole thing there. Add to my stack. And I'll just keep going until this is maybe two inches tall. That's usually about all I can handle. Any more than that and it starts getting too raw and stuff falls out. Okay, see, this is really thick. I don't want that in there, but I can use these leaves. And it doesn't matter which way you turn them because you're going to get one side on one on the other. And a lot of the leaves do print differently. Like the front side will look totally different from the back side, especially with the rose leaves. It's fascinating. All right. Begonias. Now I think I want to do some rose leaves because they do turn out nice. So, and these I picked off yesterday, so they're kind of dried out. I intend to freeze them, so I don't care if they're dried out. I was really just wanting them to kind of flatten. Let's do that just all by itself right there, so we can really get a good study of the rose leaf. Now, I've got this. This was in some of the bundles of flowers, and this doesn't print spectacularly, but it's interesting. So I'm gonna do a couple of these. 3. Like that. Let's see if we can get that to do its cool thing that it did. It had, like, it came out kind of gray in some areas, and just little areas. It was weird. I don't have, a ton of experience with this, but I'd never had something print exactly like that before. I don't know if it was a fluke. I don't know if it was, whatever was next to it bled through. If you don't put the papers in between like I'm doing, stuff does bleed through, which can be very cool. I just found that I prefer each one to kind of stand on its own. So this one, let's do a big red. And like before, I'm gonna open it up until I get to the middle. Okay, if it's just really, there's a lot of stuff going on, it's just too much trouble, I'm gonna grab this little thing right here and break it off. I'm just pulling this little wad of petals out. And then there's my little middle section. And let's put some of these on here. I'm kind of feeling down at the bottom here to see how far to cut down, because I don't want to cut too far, because all my petals will come out, but I do want to give it a good trim so that it's not as bulky. And then I can just sprinkle those around like that. Let's just see. We'll see. And then kind of carefully lay this out. And sometimes I put it in the middle. I tend to put it either at the top or at the bottom so that I can, like if I want to make a card or whatever, I can cut off this bottom half, which is going to have some dye on it and look kind of cool, I hope. But you can stick it right in the middle if you want. And I know that my last rose that I did, I put it up on the top part. So what I'm going to do with this one is flip it over and lose everything inside it and put it so that the bulk is on the bottom. Okay, put another piece on there and my rock. I think I've got just a few more and this one's going to be pretty full. So let's do some more begonias. I don't want that thick stem. So it looks like that was the end of my stenciled pieces. So now I just have plain paper. So I'm going to go ahead and do a few more of these on plain paper and get my bundle ready to be bundled, and then I'll show you what happens next. Okay? I ended up with enough stuff to make 2 bundles. So I think what I'm going to do is steam this one and boil this one, so you can kind of see the results either way. What you'll need to do is wrap your bundle in something, and okay, don't fuss at me because I know not everyone has this or can get it. This is suede text paper, which is virtually indestructible paper. It's, you know, water resistant. This has been boiled several times. If you don't have this, use fabric. If you have some scrap fabric to put around it, that would be great. If you have some extra watercolor paper, just something kind of sturdy that will protect your edges. This is what I do. Now, if you're in a situation where you've got small pots and you need to roll your bundle up, of course you will want it much thinner so that you can do that. But mine, the steamer pot is a different pot than I literally found it in a ditch. Yeah, the drainage ditch near my house. There was this stainless steel, pretty heavy pot. It was awesome. I brought it in, cleaned it up. I use it for eco printing. Now the papers don't fit exactly right in it. My little corners get kind of turned up, but that's all right. It does fine. So that one, this one I'm gonna steam, and I'll just set it down on my rack inside the pot. This one I'm gonna boil, and I'll show you how I wrap it up just with your fabric or whatever you have to put around it. I just go around like this. This suede text is still a little bit damp from yesterday. I left it hanging out on my porch to dry overnight, and it rained. Which is awesome. I'm happy for the rain. But yeah, it just re-wet my paper. You want it pretty snug without distorting your pages or bending them. And then I take just some string and wrap it. And this is why you want the suede text or the watercolor paper or the fabric or something, because if you don't put something down on here, these strings will cut into the edges of your paper and it's gonna tear. So that's what I do. And I've tried different ways. I've tried rubber bands, I've tried binder clips, I've tried all kinds of different things for this whole bundling, and I just like the wrapping it with something sturdy and using a piece of string. Just like that. So this one is gonna go in the boil pot, and I have added a little dye to it. Did I already talk about this? See, I'm getting to the point where I can't remember what I've said because I've had to stop and start several times. I used this almost vintage Rit dye in Petal Pink. I got it for 40 cents, probably at a thrift store or something like that. And that was years and years and years ago. And I probably used in that big stock pot maybe 1 or 2 teaspoons, not a whole lot. But that's in my boil pot. And what I will do is put this on my little thing like that. I will put my, probably this way. Sometimes I'll check it and my brick has fallen off and my bundle has floated to the top, and then I have to get my oven mitt and rearrange everything. So yeah, you're gonna wanna check on your progress. These need to boil and or steam for an hour and a half, something like that. And I don't do a rolling boil. I bring it to a rapid boil and then turn it down just above a simmer where I'm still getting bubbles, you know, the water's still bubbling, but it's not, you know, active, what is that called? Rapid boiling, heavy boiling. I've just completely lost the terminology there. Whatever. Okay. So let's do this. I will put these in their respective pots. I will set my timer for an hour-ish, and then we'll come back and see what we've got. My little bundles have finished cooking. So now it's time to unwrap them. I just pull them out of the pots. I usually just stand them up in the sink for a few minutes to let the excess water drain out and let them cool down enough where you can handle them. I don't let them cool all the way because I find that if you do, the plant matter, it'll stick to the pages, and I don't like that. If you like that, let it happen. I just don't. I'm going to cut my knot off and unwrap. This is the one that we boiled, and I put a little bit of pink dye in the water. So we'll see if that shows up on the pages. I didn't put much at all because I put quite a bit in some of the others I did. So I thought, well, let's see if it does anything. If it's just, I can get something really subtle. So I'm going to unwrap. And everything is going to have to dry for a while because it's wet, obviously, in case you weren't aware. I have, this is just my cushion piece, you know, so I just make a stack of those to dry out, and then I pull my ones with the actual plants in them. And I'm just going to separate everything first, get my in-between sheets in one place, and then my ones that need to be opened up in another spot. Now it's time for the fun part. Everything has been unbundled, so now I get to go in and open it up and see what we've got. Ooh. This, okay, and this is where I just go, I don't remember what that was, but here's how it turned out. This is probably that pink rose that we used. I think that was maybe the first one that we did. And I'm just using a paper towel to kind of help me roll off the plant matter, which is pretty darn disgusting. It gets very slimy. Doesn't matter if you boil or steam, you get slime. And this was on one of our stenciled pages, which you can see very clearly when it's wet. Now as it dries, the color is going to fade some, and the stencil image will fade some too as the paper dries. But I mean, it's still going to be there, it just won't show up as vibrantly as it does right now. So I just kind of wipe off as much of the look as I can, and then set these out. You'll just want to set these out to dry. Okay, next one. This looks like, this was rose petals or something. What was this? Oh yes, this was the random petals from the red rose, and I think we had some from the pink rose. And our stenciling, which I can't even remember what it was, because some of them, you know, I did a few while we were sitting here, and then some of them I had done previously and added to the batch. So I can't even tell what the stencil image was. All I see is weird swipes of paint, which is really cool. And you can certainly use colors if you want. I just like the white for the stenciling because it just looks so much like a shadow. Oh yeah. See, just with the petals laid down, it's not really so much about the pattern or the shape of a flower as it is just cool, abstract pattern. And this was that weird plant that we kind of bisected to make it a little flatter. And it almost always prints really well, whatever it is. Oh yeah, and look at the stencils. how they show up against this because it printed so dark. That's super cool. Oh yeah, that's the begonia, which is super slimy and gross. Blech. And you can clearly see the PM Artist Studio daisy masks that we used on there. I'm going to end up ripping these to shreds before they even get dry. And this looks like, oh yes, our rose leaf. Oh look, the stencil was actually a rose design. I didn't even realize that. And you can see how one side of the leaf prints totally different than the other side. I think the greener part was the front side and then the browner part is the back side. And it does that every time, at least on the rose leaves. That turned out really cool. It's just like each one is like opening a Christmas present. You just don't know what's going to happen inside. And sometimes you get socks, just like Christmas. And then other times it's like a Nintendo. This is that one that I said, you know, it does the gray. It did absolutely nothing over here. But on this side, some of the gray showed through. It probably would have been better to do that one on a not stenciled sheet. Because yeah, that's not too impressive, but you know, we've got some color. We can do stuff with it. It's basically a painty paper that we can use for our collage fodder or our greeting cards or our scrapbook pages or our art journals or our junk journals or whatever. And this was a red rose. Oh yeah, I did this one on that background that had the, that I stenciled through a dirty stencil. So some of the color came off. So we have all kinds of interestingness on this one. Oh, that's super cool. And I want to do this really gently because I don't want to make the paper start to peel, you know. Too much friction and your paper is going to start to peel. So I'm just gently rubbing off all of the bleh. Oh, I love that. Okay, those turned out great. Now let's do our steamed batch. Now remember, this one was just on a little platform at the bottom of our pot. So it didn't have any dye in it, but the papers that I used between each layer had dye and stuff on them from previous batches. So it kind of bled onto some of the sheets, which is awesome because I got like a dye bath without having to make a dye bath. Okay, begonias. Oh, that looked great. I don't know where some of these other colors came from. Probably from the, like I said, the in-between sheets. And it's awesome. If you don't want that, then you would definitely want to use white paper in between, or you don't have to use any in between at all. And when you do that, you know, not only the color, but the pattern from whatever is under it can transfer through if it's got like a, you know, a lot of pigment in it. And that can be really cool. Or it could just mess up your design. Totally a matter of opinion. So there you go. Do it either way. And this is another rose. It looks like it was another red one. Yep. Oh yes. And I'm just fascinated by how different one side is from the other. It's just so cool. And that this one that I just wish I had a ton of, because it's always impressive. This has got some weird dots and stuff on it. No, none of these were stenciled in this batch. It's just the way it did. Must have been the steaming process. Do you see the little dots? I really, really like that. I don't know how it happened, but I'm glad it did. Love that. This is, I don't remember what this is. Oh, yeah, it's that weird little thing that either does something cool or does nothing. And on this one, it did nothing. But it did pick up the color and kind of the shape from the rose that it was next to, even though I had papers in between. Those red roses are heavily pigmented and they do bleed through, so that's kind of awesome. And yeah, I was getting down to the end of the stuff that I had pulled. Oh yeah, I didn't even show you these. These were some light pink little mini roses, you know. Not long stem, but there's like 4 or 5, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a little cluster. And I had started, I just laid them out, took them out of the water they were in and laid them out so I could dry them. And then they were kind of really squishy, and their middle part I was able to kind of squish flat. So that's what I did. I just squished it as flat as I could and then laid it down. And I knew not much would happen color-wise, because the color of them was too light. And well, pattern wise it's kind of neat over here, but it's just kind of blobby color over here, but still kind of cool, especially on the left where you can kind of see a little bit of the rosiness, and over here it's weird. It is weird. But I'm thinking you put some watercolor on here and, you know, to add some more colors to it, this is going to be awesome. You could even go in and, you know, these little parts I can see, kind of draw around, make some kind of free-form, messy, mixed media flowers. Okay, single rose leaf bunch. I don't know what that was. Something from a neighboring print, I'm guessing. It looks like a question mark. like the leaf is confused. I don't know. It has questions. And red rose. Oh yeah, red rose with, I put some leaves behind it and some of the, you know, the crumblies from the middle. That's what they do. They just kind of print crumbly. Oh, that's kind of cool. It looks like a rose with leaves. This side not so much. But this side where the rose was down first and the leaves on top, see that had the leaves on top and the rose underneath. This side looks cool. I'll do that again. I like that. And this looks like, okay, this is whatever's left in my pile. Yep. And I just threw it in here. We've got some petals and some leaves. And that little thing, you know, whatever that's called, that print's kind of fun. And then the little rose droppings. I know what these things are called. I'm just having trouble retrieving that from my brain because I'm over 50 now. And this is the world we live in at my age. Okay. That's actually, I like that. That has a lot of interestingness. So those are the prints that we got today. I'm just going to throw all this away. If you compost, you know, there you go. This really doesn't take much. It's going to cost you some paper and some time and effort, but totally worth it because you can get, you know, a big batch of prints to work with. And there was only like maybe 1 or 2 in here that were kind of meh. The rest of them I really liked and will keep and will use. So totally worth it. I hope that you will give it a try. Try it with the stencils. Use color if you want. If you come up with something else fun to do or to include, let me know. That's all I've got for today. The end.